Hello.
Sorry.
We are here.
Sorry for the crap quality.
We are in Norfolk and with a little clean lens. How is everyone? I'm sure you're fine.
Technical difficulties again.
A classic. My fault. Cool. Well, we asked the question on self-build camper vans about how to insulate your floor, and we said we don't do battening, and apparently wildfire struck out. So here we are.
Just a caveat to this, we are not professional certified campervan builders because there's no such thing as a certified campervan builders. Our experience comes from property, from about 15 to 20 years experience in property building.
I have an engineering background.
And then transferring it over to campervan. So no, we are not qualified as campervan builders because no one is.
But that's also because there's nobody to provide that qualification to people. Anyway, let's get to the point. Here are your questions.
Let me just move this down so we're not quite so blinded by the lights.
Fun questions that
Here we
people have answered. The first one is, are battens load bearing? We're talking about the wooden bits that segregate the insulation board. We've done tests, I've done tests. We haven't done fatigue testing because we don't have the machines for it. But if you do force over area, that gives you pressure. So if you widen your area, you reduce the pressure. So if you're jumping up and down or something like this, you are going to dissipate that load onto the insulation board beneath it. Now, we see a lot of people doing the battens and they only do it lengthways, which means the board, your plywood floor, would be able to bend like this, so you're actually not
Even
doing...
if it's screwed down.
Even if it's screwed
I'm
down.
going to be hopefully asking the questions that you want answered, but if you do have more questions during this or afterwards, please drop them in the comments or ask them live and we can answer them for you.
Yeah, so the preferred picture that people always post is battens perpendicular to each other, all squared out, which is supposed to take the load off the insulation board. So when you step on it, the force is transferred through the battens into the van floor. And the insulation there is purely to insulate, not to load bear. But there's a lot of people battening in a line, which is great, but it still means the floor can bend in that way. If you do it square, you're trying to create a compound bend when that's bending it in two planes, which is actually quite a lot harder for materials because you're trying to compress and pull the material apart, so it's a little bit hard to do compound bends. So people who are battening, most of them are doing it wrong, and we feel we don't need to batten because we've done our tests. And so we put some plywood on some insulation board, jump up and down, overloaded it, put more loading than what we felt was necessary. So I'm 100 kilograms, so 5 of me, we got 500 kilograms on a small bit of ply, 12 mil, onto the, I think we used 25 mil insulation board.
Yeah.
We positioned the ply offset onto the insulation board so that if there was any deformation, you'd see it in the line as it would press. You'd have the unpressed insulation board next to the compressed insulation board. There was nothing. The only thing that we can't, the thing that we don't have evidence on is fatiguing. So if it were to turn to powder or dust laid down a nice insulation board, because we don't have that fatigue cycling.
I do actually have some PIR board underneath my garage in my shed that's been there for 5 years. Not under pressure, but it's made of plastic, right? So it's not going to degrade. It's got mould and mildew on it.
It's not degrade as in biodegrade, it's degrade as in fatigue cycling. So if you're getting in and out of that camper, and you've also got to ask yourself, how often are you actually getting inside in that van? Like, you're stepping inside that van maybe 5 times a day, and how long are you in that van? Are you full-time in that van, or is it just weekends? So realistically, your van, the flooring might only see like 100 kilograms once every week for like 10 seconds. And it's that sort of frequency. Sorry, go on. Just
as well to emphasise this, we have hire vans, right? So ours are getting stress tested every week, every weekend, consistently. They're being rented out consistently over summer, so they're not
weekenders. They are full-time, back-to-back bookings. We've got people in and out,
with people
abusing them.
Yeah, are abusing. Not treating them with, not abusing them, but not understanding, how to potentially.
Yeah, but then again, it's a floor, so you can't ask too much. You can't like in the terms and conditions, must tiptoe inside the van.
So we found that the insulation board doesn't compress. Now, that, not to say it does not compress at all. Obviously, there will be a certain weight.
But we overloaded it. We did worst case scenario. We did small footprint, and of course, I did a nice little diagram for everyone. This is someone's foot, and if you've got some ply, if you've got some ply, that dissipates the load. So instead of having a point load, which you would be able to press through the insulation board, and then you've essentially yielded the insulation board, because it is a not honeycomb structure, but a air bubble construction, which is how insulation works, through trapping air. With the plywood, that then dissipates the load, and it's a one press. So a footstep wouldn't be the shape of a foot, the footprint wouldn't be the size of a foot. It will be sort of dissipated over a larger sort of metre squared area, which also helps reduce this compacting down. The second question which was brought in was, that's the insulation board. What happens in a rollover? They're referring to a car crash. So we don't screw our floors down. We simply put our insulation board, ply on top.
And we don't glue them either. We have glued with one van.
We did glue just to sort of see it, but it didn't actually make any difference. It was the adhesive.
Plasterboard adhesive expanding.
Yeah, that's the one. It did something. It was actually quite nice for the insulation process because it stopped it from moving around. But I don't think it was necessary. We didn't do it in our first van and see nothing. So what you want to do is have your plywood as in big pieces as possible. Don't do tiny little pieces. Don't try and save wood, which you essentially would have done if you had battened it, because you'd have to have the ply.
Cuts, right?
Yeah, you'd have to have the ply on your battens to screw down, so you didn't have 2 bits of ply flapping around.
Which also makes it really, really fucking difficult when you're actually then putting your actual floor down. So whether you're laying vinyl or what we prefer to use Carndine, because then you have to. What we were finding is when we were laying down our ply on top with battens, we'd have a mismatch. Even if you screwed them the same, then you'd have to put another sheet of ply on top, like a 3mm sheet of ply.
Yeah, that's it.
And then you could put your flooring on. So even more time. It's more really the time and the cost of wood, especially now, that is the reason why. The thermal reason isn't really the main reason. It's actually to make you better van builders.
Yeah, and plus that whole screw going down, that's technically a thermal bridge as well, especially if it's quite close. With going back to the floor layout, say if you were to have your joins and your plywood here, if your insulation board is not in line with those plywood boards, so if you had a bit of ply and you had your 2 insulation boards next to each other off a plywood cut, if that makes sense. So if your 2 bits of ply joined here, you'd have your insulation board here. That would ensure your ply is going to stay level.
Hang on, I've got some beer mats for this.
Oh, beer mats, do love a good beer mat.
So this is your insulation board where it joins like this.
Yeah, that's it. And then you'd have a ply bit to cover those, like in brickwork.
So you just have an offset joint is basically what we're trying to do.
So when you do start putting, we use Carndine flooring, goop it on, that then seals the gap. And that's actually enough to keep those 2 bits of ply together. Like, again, no screwing down, no whatsoever. 4 bits of ply, 4 bits of insulation board, no little tiny cuts, because that's when you start getting this fluctuation on the flooring. And it just gets messy. And we find when you build everything on top of it, say there's a little sample demonstration, you've got your floor and your plywood, you're going to screw down into that plywood anyway.
Show that for a little bit longer just so people can see it.
So we typically use 12mm ply.
Be a glamorous assistant and hold it, swap round.
We use 12mm ply because that ensures that the screw actually bites the wood. Anything lower, such on the walls, if you go to like 5.6 or the 3.9, you do actually lose that bite in that screw. You can't bury it and actually it won't countersink itself. Basically, the thread will give way before the head countersinks.
And we are aware as well in building, in terms of flooring, 18mm is usually the minimum that you use for flooring. However, we found that because it's being uniformly supported throughout the van build, 12mm was sufficient. Yeah.
You could go to 18 if you're a bit more sure, but 12mm was the minimum we found the screw bites. And if you've attached all your appliances, such in a van where you do typically do it to the outside because of space and height reasons, that's then bolted to the wall, and that's what secures your floor down. And they say there's no shifting, there's none of this. There is actually a friction as well. I could get you some numbers if you're really keen, but the friction coefficient between the wood, the metal, under compression is enough. Like it's not going to slide around, no braking, there's not going to be movement. I'm sure there are some interesting numbers behind there, especially with the weight of everything on top. And next up, we have the next big question is, how do you squeeze? What do you secure down with? So say with this actually leads on from what I just said. If you have like a kitchen or a bed, what are you screwing down into? And of course, it's the ply. People seem to be using the battens, which I get. You've got a appliance like a kitchen. Sorry, not appliance. You've got a kitchen unit. You want that load to go through the ply, through the batten, into the floor, so it completely negates the insulation taking any load. But like we've just discussed, or like I've just discussed, the insulation board is actually sufficient to carry that load without sagging over time. And if you do look on some of the companies' websites, they actually do recommend don't go below 10% of the compression. And that's actually for secondary load bearing in buildings. Now they're just advising that, insulation board is not a structurally load bearing material in terms of you can't hold a building.
Hang on then, why are we putting it in or not putting battens? Because that sounds really contradictory.
Yes, correct. So you don't use it to support a building, but it's classed as a secondary support structure.
So if you already have a strong floor, like a metal van floor,
so that's basically
that's your initial support, and then the insulation is your secondary support.
Almost, very close. So you're not holding the van up with the insulation, you're holding things like yourself, bikes, appliances. They reference cars and like fridges and stuff like that when they're doing their mid-flooring insulation. They don't. I couldn't find any compressive strength numbers though. There's nothing to define it, but I think they're keeping that little secret. Possibly some paid information on the company's behalf, but every company's different. And obviously the more premium ones, I would imagine, they promote more of a compressive strength material. You can do these tests at home, by the way.
Yeah.
Just get a small bit of, use 25mm, 30 on the bottom. We find obviously it's the floor, it's going to be cold. That's where the cold air flows anyway. It's going to be cold, it's going to be really hard to heat up anyway. So we're just trying to keep that nasty steel cold. Anyway, I digress. Get yourself a bit of insulation board, 25mm or 30. Put a bit of wood on top of that. Jump up and down on it. Because
if I'm perfectly honest, just sit back because your head's cut off. If I'm perfectly honest, I was against it and I always wanted to do battening in all of our vans. And just a bit of context as well, we have two medium wheelbase vehicles and one long wheelbase vehicle.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to batten because from my experience, that's how you do it in property in most flooring.
Absolutely agree.
And also because that's pretty much the only pictures that you see on Facebook.
That's the reoccurring thing, isn't it?
So that's why we want to just break the myth, and it's not because we want to build sloppy or quickly, it's because we want to make it more time efficient and quicker for you so that you can get on to the next stage of your build process quicker. And we're only telling you this because we have done this.
Yeah, absolutely. We've tested it. I think as well, going on from that, we're not trying to do a rush job here. And from an engineering perspective, there's no evidence. There's just pictures of people putting these battens down. You go, oh, that looks really smart. That looks professional. That looks like some nice crisp edges. Like, yes, I'm going to do that. That makes sense. But no one seems to have actually done any research into just putting the down. And there's no evidence of it actually sagging. There's a lot of talk about it sagging, but there's no pictures of it sagging, especially in the step area. So,
drink some water. He's got a cold.
Yeah, got that.
So that was our basic summary of why we don't batten and why you shouldn't have to batten. If you have already battened, don't go ripping it up. It's absolutely
You're fine. Well, the thing about when we talked about thermal bridges, we were just trying to stir some water to get people those things like, why would you spend more time and money on something which is actually not better?
Yes, exactly. So drop in the comments what you'd like to see the next video on, because I actually haven't come up with a topic for what we're going to do next. And watch the rest of our videos as well about sort of other insulation videos. We've got ones about layout. And we're basically trying to help you become better van builders.
Yeah.
And we are hosting
and not sheep. We don't want sheep.
Exactly. I mean, there are some things that we do that other people recommend, but we like to be a bit different and like to try new things.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't be doing this if it was what everyone else was doing.
Exactly. And we are having our first ever in real life event in Bournemouth, Saturday the 8th of January. There will be a link in this description. There probably isn't right now.
We've got local everything. Local
food, local booze, local coffee. All 3 of our completed vans are going to be there, and our 4th van is going to be there, and it's going to be incredibly... Are we going to reveal then?
I think we should just tell them.
No, I'm not telling people now.
Well, it's going to be a campervan, but...
It's not going to be a campervan.
There's a very good chance that it might be something else. We're going to, again... We're pushing the boat out into the water.
Pushing the boundaries. Something completely different.
We're going to open up a whole new market. Anyway,
I think we had a comment. I'm just going to open it up. I'm really sorry about the video quality on this.
Yeah, we thought we didn't. We'd apply enough Vaseline to the lens.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Really interesting, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. From Emilio Rodriguez, I don't bother doing it. My van came with a full MDF floor, which was in good condition. Used silver foil underlay and carpet. Lovely and warm, was much quicker and less hassle.
Yeah, absolutely. That underlay, I'm assuming you're referring to the
Silvery bubble wrap.
Yeah, almost like the bubble wrap
It's got
stuff.
really bad U value though.
Yeah, so the thermal insulative.
Insulative.
So that works on the same principle, trapping air, but you'll find when you actually install that, you're compressing those air bubbles. So you've no longer got that air. Air is considered the best
Insulation.
the best insulating properties, essentially. So you've removed that completely from that. Also, like discussed, the floor isn't where you lose all the heat. The floor is going to be cold anyway, and the heat is what you lose through windows. Glass, single pane glass. There's a reason we put double glazed in our houses.
Thanks, Adam.
Single pane will just let all the heat out, and you can see that through condensation.
Yeah, so you're always, and it might be lovely and toasty whilst you're in bed under a blanket and a duvet.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've got a heater or not, but we are designing and building vans that can be taken to skiing, like to the extremes, and that they're going to be toasty and cozy.
Ask us about our ceiling in Otto. Secret design. But yeah, it's really like you're not going to really get it wrong with the flooring. It's going to be cold because it is on the floor. But we are just trying to save time and stress on cutting out those battens, which somehow I managed to develop quite a passion, hatred to. I think it's.
And oh my gosh, you would. I mean, if you are on any of the self-build campervan groups, we've had abuse. Well, I've had abuse thrown at me. I've been called slanderous things for like educating people on this or putting forward our ideas.
Again, just as a caveat, this is our opinion. This is what we've done. We have proven it. We will continue doing it to our vans. And at no point do I consider myself a cowboy builder. In fact, I'm quite passionate about engineering. And I always like to take it to the 99%, where Nicola always tells me to just
I like to have
stop.
a safety factor in it, so we're actually quite a good.
Yeah, I like to get things precise to a point where I will be building the van up until its rental date. And Nicola will be trying to pull me out because I forgot about date night.
Anyway, we've got another comment. Sorry for this.
We will be ending soon, don't worry.
Well, if we've got people chatting on here, what happens with the floor ribs if you use insulation board only? Will it dent in the board?
Good question. Yes, going back to the force over area is a good preference.
Yeah, that's the insulation board sitting straight on top of the ribs.
Yeah, there will be some deformation there.
Then putting the MDF on top.
Absolutely, because you've reduced your surface area, you're increasing pressure. Again, so you've got to sort of, any sort of approach you take at this, you've got to ask, well, what if? It's like, yes, there might be some deformation in the board underneath, but what does that actually really lead to? Like,
I would say it leads to a reduction in the insulation property of the PIR board.
But this is
compressing out the bubbles.
Oh, absolutely. But
like when you get a chocolate mousse and you just like squidge it down.
Yeah,
a bit,
but this is something actually you can test, and I tested as well. Just put a bit of offcut there, jump up and down on it, and you can see how much it impressions the PIR board. You'll obviously get the inverse of the rib. I think when I did it was about 2 mil, and in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to lose. Well,
and that was extreme testing, him leaping, jumping on.
I like to build something and then like elbow barge it to really sort of rent-to-proof it, as it were.
Anyway, we'll wrap it up there before we start rambling. But please, if you're watching this on repeat, drop your questions in the comments. We will come back and answer them for you. Join us next year. I know everyone's winding down for Christmas, but join us next year for our in real life event in Bournemouth. All 3 of our vans, our brand new van. We're going to be there giving talks.
There's
going to be kids' craft entertainment, so you can just shove them with our teachers. Yep. They can do all the crafty things, and you can nerd out on campervans with us.
It's actually a huge tactical deployment where we can just have a camping trip in the middle of Bournemouth, and the council think that we're just doing a festival.
Yeah.
But we've got it all catered for. We've got alcohol, drinks, food, all local. Our vans will be there. You'll be there.
The ticket link will be in the bio now, or should be in the bio.
Oh, more questions. I have a diesel heater. I'm a big fan. Radio heating options would be great.
Maybe we can talk about heating next week. We don't want to.
Oh, I was going to say a key placement, but yes, we can actually do.
Let's talk about heaters next week.
We have come up with the perfect location for the diesel heaters. It won't be compatible with every van, but the ideal location we found.
Right, we're talking about heating next week. That's it. Done.
Diesel heaters done.
Not just diesel heaters, other heaters too.
Oh yeah, log burners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other heater is the chlorinator that you used.
Oh, chlorify.
Chlorify.
Yeah, off it, heating
Right,
off the
next
engine.
week we're going to be talking about heaters.
Yeah.
On the spot.
Done.
And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. We are Nick and Matt, Jurassic Vans.
Yeah, the video quality will be better next time. There was, I think
our technical issues.
Yeah, technical issues.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you guys as a community.
Yeah, good luck out there.
Top right.
Oh, top right. No, there we go. See ya.